A middle school lunch break turned deadly when bullies attacked a 13-year-old boy. However, the school administrators were well aware of the bullying. In fact, the bullies were supposed to be suspended on the day of the attack. Yet the school failed to punish them, and then a judge failed to send them to jail for manslaughter. Diego Stolz's attack was recorded by students and posted online, showing him on the ground, unconscious. He would never regain that consciousness. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Mckenna, and this case is very important to me because there is just so much negligence that occurred specifically at this school. Even throughout the years, we'll get into the history within this specific school. And without staff and adults doing their part in making sure that children feel safe in school, there can be deadly consequences. But before we get into the story, we've got to thank our sponsor, June's Journey. This is the best mystery game in the whole universe, the whole fictional crime universe. It's a detective story which is written as a hidden object mystery game. And it's free to download. You've got to help June Parker figure out secrets and uncover a murder. Oh, and it's June's Journey's 6th anniversary on September 25th. So starting on September 30th, June's Journey is actually going to be posting a live action web series on their YouTube channel. And it will have exclusive mysteries featuring real players. But you need to watch it to vote on who you believe is the criminal. Think you can figure it out? If you do, if you guess correctly, you can win in-game prizes. Same with finding the Easter eggs in the series. So make sure you are following them on social media and also download June's Journey for free using the link in my description or the QR code on the screen. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2019 in California, and 13-year-old Diego lived in Moreno Valley with his aunt Juana and his uncle Felipe. And they were his legal guardians after both of his parents had passed when he was younger. His mother passed when he was 1, and his father passed when he was around 9. And so his aunt and uncle took in him as well as his 2 older brothers, and they also had 2 biological children to take care of as well. Diego was attending Landmark Middle School and was in 8th grade at the time. On September 16th, 2019, Diego would enter his middle school in a great mood, and this wasn't always the case for this very scared boy, but that day was supposed to be different. That afternoon, he would be found outside of the classroom in the schoolyard, unconscious, and he would be rushed to the hospital where he was in critical condition. They had found that he had sustained a traumatic brain injury, and he was still not regaining consciousness at that time. What occurred was soon revealed as it had been recorded and posted on social media. A video that was taken by a student's cell phone had been posted on Facebook showing Diego in the schoolyard being assaulted by 2 boys who are also students. Now, one of these boys went up to Diego and would end up getting in his face, confronting him over an unknown subject, and then turning away and leaving, however, quickly turning back around and punching Diego in the face. Meanwhile, Diego had his arms by his side and seemed to be not saying anything. As Diego gathered himself from this punch, this student then struck him in the back of the head, which caused him to basically fall headfirst into a concrete pillar. As he then fell to the ground and was lying there, the 2 boys continued to pound on him, and Diego was unable to fight back. These 2 boys then ran away, as well as the rest of the students.
Other students say it looked like he might have had a seizure. He appeared to be foaming at the mouth while he was lying on the ground. He was taken to the hospital with serious injuries.
9 days later, on September 24th of 2019, Diego Stolz would pass away in the hospital, never regaining consciousness. His family never got to say goodbye. He had been taken off of life support after showing no signs of improvement. He was thought to be brain dead. It turned out that Diego was on his lunch break at the time, which they could go into the schoolyard for. And he had been confronted by these boys for revenge. You see, Diego had gone to the vice principal and confided in her that he was being bullied by these students. Now, he had done this with the help of his adult cousin named Jasmine, who he had confided in, who then took him to the vice principal's office to tell her what was going on. So 3 days prior to the attack, Diego and his cousin went to Mrs. Camila O'Connor's office and told her that the bullying that had once been just verbal had become violent. At this point, a week prior to the attack, he had been punched in the chest and they were threatening to continue to harm him. Now, this meeting occurred that Friday, and the vice principal told Diego that she would end up suspending the boys for 3 days. And then the boys would also be moved to classes so they would no longer share the same class as Diego as well. It seemed like a wonderful plan, and so she said that the suspension for these boys would start the next Monday. So meanwhile, he could go home that Friday for the rest of the day so he didn't have to deal with them. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the next week, the boys would be suspended. However, that Monday would be September 16th, the day Diego would lose consciousness. You see, he attended school that day believing that for the next 3 days at least, he would finally be safe. However, his bullies had not been suspended. They were waiting for him, and they had a plan. Diego's aunt and uncle would tell the police that the bullying had been occurring for about a year now. It started when he was in 7th grade, and his shoes and clothes were being stolen at that point, and he was also being verbally attacked. And Diego was always complaining to his family that school was horrible for him because of these bullies. When it first started, his aunt did go to the school officials who allegedly gave her an anti-bullying pamphlet. And so Diego's aunt and uncle claimed that they had taught Diego not to retaliate against these bullies because it would make it worse. And so they were really trying to get the staff to understand that Diego was not the problem and to understand how scared he was. But that just was not happening, and they felt like the staff was not taking this seriously. Now, the identities of the attackers have not been revealed due to the fact that they are minors, though they were referred to as JD and ME. But we do know that they were allegedly in the same grade as Diego and believed to be 13. They were taken into custody after Diego's death and placed in juvenile detention. They were charged with manslaughter and denied these allegations, and the DA, as well as the probation department, were hoping that these boys were going to serve time for what they did. At this point, it was confirmed by the school's attorney that one of the boys involved in the fatal attack had been the one who actually struck Diego a week prior. And Diego had not only just gone to the vice principal, he also went to a teacher for help. He went to this science teacher telling him what had happened, and the science teacher actually then went to the vice principal and claimed that he had asked her to review the surveillance footage that they had to see what actually occurred. Though the family's attorney claimed that the footage was not looked at until after Diego had passed. None of Diego's bullying concerns were discussed with any of the other administrators, including the other vice principal and the principal. Diego's aunt Juana said that she felt that the school administration had let her down, that his death was preventable if the administrators had done their jobs. Camila O'Connor was said to graduate with her Bachelor of Arts for Elementary Education Focus in 2004, and she began teaching that year. And then in 2016, she was working as the assistant principal at the Moreno Valley. She also then graduated with her Master's of Education degree in 2019. The same year as Diego's death. But this landmark middle school was said to have a history of violence due to bullying. And after the news broke of Diego's case, the LA Times did an investigation into the school and their involvement with the local police department. They would find that in the 13 months leading up to Diego's death, there were 38 calls requesting officers to the school for violent or criminal allegations. These calls range from assaults, threats, battery, and disturbances. This was the Riverside County Sheriff's Department who would end up taking these calls. They would go to the school, and 14 total reports were filed, including 2 that occurred on March 19th of 2019. The first call was to report a shooting at the school, and the officers arrived and they found that it was most likely a hoax, and so this 13-year-old was brought into custody for this false report. However, 2 hours later, they would be called back to the school. This time, it was a real threat, and the officers had to break up a fight of about 50 students. They used pepper balls that they fired into the crowd to defuse the situation.
19 students were affected. 3 of them went to the hospital. 1 female student was arrested. There's no word yet on what sparked that fight.
A 14-year-old ended up being brought into custody for suspicion of battery. But the rest of the 14 reports that were made included 3 allegations of battery, 2 petty theft, 2 suspicious circumstances, 1 assault, 1 alarm being set off, 1 allegation of threats, 1 harassing phone calls, and 1 violation of state welfare codes. The incidents that weren't filed, however, were said to not be serious enough to warrant a report, or that the suspects had fled before the officers arrived. But these were all from Landmark Middle School. But an actual death at this school? Well, Diego was not the first of that either. 12-year-old Jared Schroeder had been on the basketball court of Landmark Middle School when he was punched in the head by a 14-year-old boy during a dispute. This 14-year-old wanted the court for himself and his friends, so he ended up attacking Jared to get him to leave. Jared instead would pass away from a severed artery in his vertebrae. Now, this was 20 years prior to Diego at the same school, and violence at this school due to bullying had been a problem for the past 2 decades. Former students and staff members at Landmark began to describe how frequent the fights were at this school and how little administrators did to address any of it.
I just pray for Diego and his family and our whole community, and also the 2 boys that's probably finna do life in jail.
Kids been getting bullied and they're not doing anything. We've asked them to change the policies, the rules a little bit more stricter, but that hasn't happened.
Within the past year, there's been like a lot of fights going on.
Drive around, you see on the chain link fence, they'll have stop bullying. It's a joke.
Parents of the school began to have meetings demanding to know what the school was going to do to stop this on-campus violence. They were worried for their kids who were still attending.
I look forward to productive conversations this evening. We will factor in all the suggestions and constructive ideas we gather tonight so that we can ensure that our students feel safe every single day.
You guys need to fix up your bullying program. My math teacher literally one day in 3rd period, she snapped and told us that it was our fault that Diego passed away.
What was y'all when I needed you?
And just a month after Diego's death on October 14th of 2019, another Landmark student was assaulted on the lunch break. The victim ended up with only minor injuries, thankfully, and the school nurse did attend to those injuries, but 911 had been called and 2 female students were arrested for the assault. They were said to be 12 and 13.
These girls had time to punch my daughter in the face 9 times.
I'm really uneasy about it. I'm scared to send her to school now. I'm worried.
Now, from the day of Diego's attack to the time of the court hearings of the 2 attackers, the vice principal, Camila O'Connor, was said to leave the school campus. She was not seen there for several months, and the school's spokesperson ended up making a statement saying that they respectfully disagreed that the district was liable for the death of Diego.
Whenever we learn something, we do something.
When asked if Diego's death could have been prevented,
it's still under investigation, so I really can't comment on that at this time.
Now, the attackers would be held in the Juvenile Detention Center for the next 47 days, though after that, they were released into their parents' custody on November 12th. They had taken a plea for involuntary manslaughter as well as assault with force likely to cause great bodily injury. But they were able to be home for Christmas with their families, unlike Diego, who would never enjoy another Christmas again. They would be free on bail until their February 2020 sentencing, and meanwhile, Diego's aunt would speak in a news conference to confirm that they were going to start legal proceedings against the school. She cried as she spoke to the public, saying, "It's difficult to put into words many emotions and the pain in my heart. I will continue to fight for my son. I wouldn't have allowed my son to beat somebody else."
He was a calm person. He never left it. I hope he can hear us right now, but tell him I miss him.
We're here for Diego. Diego lost his life today.
What did the school district do? Nothing. What did the school district do a week before when the mother came pleading for her son's life? They did nothing. Where is the superintendent? Second,
He's right there.
where are
You need to resign from office.
We're here tonight to work with the community to support them in.
We are the community. You're not working with us.
Juana and Felipe had wanted to file a wrongful death lawsuit. However, in 2019, they were unable to because the law didn't allow legal guardians to file if they were not the biological parents. This also meant that even if they got the lawsuit, his guardians wouldn't receive any of that money and his biological siblings would be given it all. And at this point, they were at a loss for what to do next. But 6 weeks after the attack on October 29th of 2019, it was announced that the school principal, Scott Walker, and the vice principal, Camila O'Connor, were fired from their roles and replaced. The new principal had been working for the district as a child welfare and attendance coordinator, and she was promoted. However, the now former Vice President O'Connor didn't go far and allegedly worked at Landmark Middle School in a different position, at least for some time. So Camila O'Connor was then believed to be working as the principal at a John Knight Middle School sometime in 2020. And this school was in Dixon, which was about 7 hours away, but no charges were brought against the principal or the vice principal. Now, by February of 2020, the attackers were brought back into court for sentencing. Judge Roger Lubes claimed that they would not be getting any jail time. Instead, they would serve 150 hours of community service, therapy, and enroll in a character building program for anger management. But Judge Lubes said that the law required the least restrictive terms to promote rehabilitations, and that even though they were directly responsible, they had not intended to kill Diego. That putting these boys behind bars would do more harm than good, though the judge did not believe that these boys showed any remorse or empathy for what they did. And then it was explained that they would be on probation till their 18th birthday. But they would not be going to jail. But the boys' lawyers said that the boys were actually extremely remorseful and that at 13, they couldn't really process what was going on at the time. They were then ordered to return to court in 3 months or they would be sent back to juvenile detention. Though Diego's family felt at this time that they had received no justice and they could not file this wrongful death lawsuit either, or so they thought. In September of 2020, a year after the attack, an Assembly member, Eloise Gomez Reyes, created Assembly Bill 2445 for the Diego family specifically. This removed the requirement for biological or adoptive families to be the only ones able to file a lawsuit on behalf of a minor who died due to wrongful conduct. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed this into effect. So Diego's aunt and uncle were allowed to file that lawsuit against the school, claiming that the district failed to take action learning that Diego had been bullied. They also sued the families of both boys. Though due to COVID, this lawsuit was pushed back, and Diego's aunt was saying it was torturous waiting for all this time. But meanwhile, I found that the Moreno Valley School was in another lawsuit in 2021. This was about an 11-year-old who was referred to as CB, who was said to have a disability and alleged that when he was attending that school, the school police officers used excessive force and discriminated against him due to his disability and his race. He was a black boy, and that over the course of 4 months, starting on August of 2019, this all began to occur. This was a month before Diego's death. Now, CB stated that the school officers violently handcuffed him multiple times during school, and when they would call his mom to come pick him up, they would take off the handcuffs as though they had never done so. Another incident CB spoke about was being taken into a secluded room and placed in a physical hold before he was handcuffed on his ankles and his wrists. He was then suspended for his behavior that day. Then in October of 2019, CB said that he had allegedly thrown a rock at a teacher and was pinned to the ground face down by officers before he was taken in the back of a cop car. However, after this occurred, his parents did transfer him to a different school, fearing for his safety. It didn't end there, though, because at his new school, he got in a fight with another student and then began to push the teacher and throw different things, and he was taken into custody. And although they were going to expel him, this was dismissed after an investigation into his behavior revealed that it was most likely due to his disability. Now, it was stated by CB's parents that he was suspected to have undiagnosed emotional and behavioral issues on top of his ADHD and ODD. School officers claimed that CB would begin to be very disruptive in class. He would be aggressive towards them when they tried to interfere, and that is why they had to take such force. However, on several occasions, incident reports were not given to his parents. His parents believed that this violated his rights, and they named the superintendent of the district, Martinez Quiroza, as well as the former principal at Landmark Middle School, Scott Walker, and several other officers as well as sheriffs. Now, this case is still ongoing, but CB's parents are just grateful that these officers are being held accountable. Now, while that suit was waiting for closure, Diego's lawsuit finally went to court, and on September 13th of 2023, the school district agreed to pay a $27 million settlement to the family of Diego Stolz. This was the largest bullying lawsuit in history, going beyond a suit settling for $9.1 million that happened in New Jersey that same year. You see, this New Jersey suit was for Mallory Grossman, a 12-year-old who had taken her own life in 2017 after months of bullying. Copeland Middle School, where she attended, did as little as Diego's school, Landmark Middle School.
To taste something like this happening before people wake up and say, hey, enough is enough already.
That day that Mallory took her life, her parents had actually gone to the school board and had a 3-hour meeting with the school to discuss their lack of help in any of this.
The only thing that they said was, we're investigating it, we'll look into it, I know your frustration. And Mallory left there feeling so depleted. She just said, you just made it worse. She's like, you don't know these girls, you've just made it worse.
She was upset.
She was
very
exhausted.
Upset.
I don't think she felt safe. I think that she was just really sad.
And was it that day that she died?
Yeah, approximately 4 hours later.
So her parents sued for gross negligence in the handling of the bullying of Mallory, but the school denied these allegations. So her family won this lawsuit for $9.1 million and even created Mallory's Law, which requires schools in New Jersey to report and act on bullying complaints.
Thank you for not letting my daughter die in vain. This isn't about my daughter Mallory. This is about all of the Mallorys. This is about making sure that the children who don't feel safe at school, there are systems in place to keep them safe.
The new bill, called Mallory's Law, would require the principal to immediately contact the superintendent of schools, the executive county superintendent, and the parents or guardians of the students involved. The current law allows the court to require parents or guardians of minors found guilty of cyber harassment to attend an anti-bullying class. Mallory's Law increases the fine if the parents fail to comply with that order. It also places a copy of the investigation in the student's records.
At the time, Mallory's lawsuit was the biggest. However, Diego's family's lawsuit was settled for more than double that amount. But this was under the condition that the school system had to commit to having more training for the staff to handle bullying, that they would enact and enforce real anti-bullying policies, and that his aunt and uncle would work with the school to create a memorial for Diego. Now, the superintendent of this district, Martinez Quiroza, made a vow to implement reform, and he sent out a letter to the staff and the parents stating, we truly care about each and every student and staff member in our district. The news of Diego's death was not something we took lightly. The safety and well-being of our students is and will remain our top priority. The school's spokesperson also made a statement reporting that the district had made several steps in the last, few years before the lawsuit was filed to prevent bullying, and they even launched an MVUSD Hearts United campaign, and this was a mission to promote kindness and compassion inside and outside of the classroom. They also made events every single month with each school in the district to continue with this, though the last update I found of this campaign, at least online, was in November of 2022, and Moreno Valley School chose to do a school-wide bingo, which they focused on acts of kindness, and then they had a trivia challenge using kindness quotes. But since then, at least online, it's been very quiet. The newest update on this case is pretty recent. And on September 20th, 2023, 4 years after Diego's death, the Moreno Valley Unified School District Board of Education then voted on whether to remove the superintendent, who had been in that position since 2017. After 3 hours, the board voted 3-2 to remove him.
Occasionally, there comes a time when institutions such as school districts need to make a change in direction. That time has come for us here in Moreno Valley.
It was believed but not confirmed that this was due to both of the lawsuits against the district. But Diego's family says that they will forever be heartbroken, but they hope this case brings about change in the school districts across the country. But can you believe that these kids were not high school students? They were still in middle school, and that deaths were occurring. And middle school is a time when bullying is very prevalent, but it's so heartbreaking. And it is really the responsibility of the school counselor, the principals, the teachers, to make sure that these students aren't terrified to go to the place where they're supposed to be learning. They shouldn't be worried about if they are going to be harmed at their school. And I really hope that this forced the school district to make those changes, because otherwise I don't think that it would have happened. And I do think that that is a beautiful way to look at Diego's impact, but he did not deserve to die. He did not deserve to be attacked to the point of death. But he didn't deserve to be bullied at all. He deserved to go to an environment where he could get his education and grow up in peace. I think that there are just far too many schools and staff, administrators, districts that allow this to continue happening, as though they don't have any way to prevent it. There can be bad neighborhoods. There can be students who don't come from the best families. But that means that the school has even more of a responsibility to make sure that these students are coming to a school that feels more like home sometimes than their own home. But even though Diego's attackers were not sentenced to any jail time, do you believe that Diego still received justice? I know that because his attackers were 13, 14 years old, that is a huge reason and why they did not get any time. Do you believe that they should have been given time regardless of their age? Do you think that this was something that because they were so young, they couldn't really grasp the seriousness of the situation? Bullying is such a violent act, whether it is physical or just verbal. It is something that truly can break you down to the point where even if you are not killed, like in Diego's case, you would rather not be alive, like in Mallory's case. So I just want to let you know that if you are someone being bullied, it does get better. There is a point where you are out of school, where you don't have to deal with those people, where those people will leave you alone. But it does get better, and you don't deserve this. And whatever they're telling you, that is more a reflection of them than you. Hurt people, but that does not make it okay. So please remember that, and please stay strong. So a quick reminder to download June's Journey with my link or the QR code, and also watch the live action series coming September 30th. So don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay.